Hello and welcome into this week's Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series Rewind show right here on Racing News Now. As always, I'm your host, Garth Allen. Thank you once again for joining me today. If this is your first time catching a Racing News Now video, consider going down below to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss a thing going forward from RNN. On today's Cup Rewind, we are looking back at late Sunday night, 70th annual Bojangles Southern 500, 367 laps, 501 miles around the 1.3 mile Darlington Raceway in Darlington, South Carolina. A bit of a rain delay to get this one started. It started very late. It was after, 10 p.m. Eastern? Shortly after 10 p.m. Eastern, it was late, and then I think finally wrapped up right about 2 a.m. Eastern, so very late race for this one, but they put on a show nonetheless, and it was probably one of the best Darlington races we've seen in a while. Was it a fantastic race that we're going to remember 10 years from now? No. Was it better than most Darlington races have been recently? Yes. And that's not saying that Darlington races have not been good in recent years, but this one was a little better. And I don't know if that's due to the package, if that's due to the entirety of the race being at night rather than starting in the day and ending at night. I'm not sure, but nonetheless, we did have a pretty good race in this one. 7 caution flags for a total of 35 laps. First one came at lap 35. It was the competition caution for the rain. Just normal procedure there when it rains and all the rubber gets washed off. Always have a competition caution there early in the race just to check tire wear and make sure everything's good on that front. Lap 69, the 38 of David Reagan and the 54 of Garrett Smithley got together on the backstretch, and then stage 1 concluded at lap 100 with Kurt Busch taking the stage 1 victory. Lap 140, the 6 of Ryan Newman and the 41 of Daniel Suarez didn't actually get together in turn 2. The 41 tries to get under Newman to make a pass there in turn 2. Just kind of gets Newman arrow loose and Newman goes around. Neither driver happy with the other after that incident. Newman more so mad at Suarez than anything, but it's setting up a very good cutoff line battle as we head into Indianapolis to set the playoffs. Lap 159. The 32 of Corey LaJoie spins in turn 2 in his Dale Jarrett throwback. Lap 199, the 36 of Matt Tifft and the 51 of BJ McLeod got together in turn 1. Lap 276, the 1 of Kurt Busch, the 8 of Daniel Hemrick, the 11 of Denny Hamlin, the 24 of William Byron, the 34 of Michael McDowell, and the 48 of Jimmy Johnson. Multi-car wreck in turn 4. Kind of a quasi-big one, similar to what you might see at Daytona and Talladega. Not quite as many cars as would usually be involved at Daytona or Talladega, but a bigger wreck than what we're used to seeing at Darlington nonetheless. 13 lead changes among 8 drivers in this race. Kyle Busch led the most laps, 118 laps led after starting in 33rd. Made quick work of the field and battled his way up to the front and had one of the faster cars in the race. But at this point, are we really surprised by that? It doesn't matter what track we go at. Does it really matter where Kyle Busch starts? Because we know he's going to end up in the front regardless. 94 laps were led by Kurt Busch. So the Busch brothers, the top 2 in laps led in this race. 79 laps led by Erik Jones. 44 laps went to Kyle Larson. 19 laps were led by Brad Keselowski. 9 laps went to Chase Elliott. 3 laps were led by Jimmy Johnson. 1 lap went to Clint Bowyer. All right, so on to your results. Kurt Busch won stage 1 and led the second most laps in this race, 94 total, so he had a very strong car in this race. Kyle Busch won stage number 2 after starting from the back and led the most laps in this race. So would it be the Kyle Busch show at the end of the race, which for better or worse, I know there's not a lot of people that enjoy seeing that, but is this one of the classic Kyle Busch shows that we've seen a lot over the past few years? Did he just kind of come out and dominate this race? No, he did not, but it was another JGR car that was able to take home the checkered flag in this race. It was his teammate Erik Jones who took the victory for his first win of the season, and now we've seen all 4 JGR cars win this season. And this is one of those things where there was a lot of questions around Jones' Daytona victory last season of, did he really deserve it? Was he really good enough to be A, to be in the 20 car, and to B, be winning races in the Cup Series? And I think this win kind of silences those doubters, because this one, Erik won straight up. There was no doubt about it that he was, if not the fastest car at the end of the race, one of the fastest cars, and he outdueled Kyle Busch at the end of this race. And you'll see Kyle Busch here in third on the results. He was running second and definitely had the second fastest car at the end of the race, if not the fastest. He might have been able to get Jones. Kyle makes a couple mistakes at the end of the race, though. Gets into the wall a couple times there within 5 laps to go, and ends up, I don't know if he had a flat tire, if he had just completely killed the right side of the car after the second one. But brought it home basically wall riding the last couple of laps. Larson was able to get by him, but Busch still was able to bring it home in third, basically wall riding the last 2 or 3 laps. It was that's some dedication right there for a guy that's already in the playoffs, doesn't need the points, doesn't really need to finish that well, and still fights his way back to finish in the 3rd position. But again, fantastic win by Erik Jones. Well deserving, and I think we're finally seeing the true potential of Erik Jones as he fights for that ride. Still questions up in the air about whether he will be in that ride next year. I think it has kind of settled out now to Christopher Bell will be in the 95 car next year, but we have nothing confirmed yet. It is still possible that Bell will fall into the 20 and they'll move Jones over to the 95. I haven't really heard much of that rumor recently, but with nothing announced yet, that question is still up in the air. And I think that's why they haven't announced it yet, because they don't know. I think they know they want either Jones or Bell in the 95, but I think they were waiting to see what Jones could do for a few more races before actually making an announcement as to where they were putting Bell next season. I think, though, this kind of solidifies that ride for Erik Jones, hopefully, because I think he is definitely deserving of a ride like that, and he's finally showing it. Larson did come home in the 2nd position with Kyle Busch in 3rd, Kevin Harvick with a strong 4th place finish, and Brad Keselowski rounds out the top 5. Rest of your top 10, strong run for Clint Bowyer in the 6th position, vaulting his way back into the playoffs, as we will see in a moment when we get to the playoff grid. Came into this race 2 points out of the playoffs, so a strong run definitely for him in this one. Kurt Busch landed in 7th. Matt DiBenedetto, another strong top 10 run in 8th. Paul Menard in 9th, and Austin Dillon rounds out the top 10. 11th through 20th, Daniel Suarez had a pretty good night going. 11th, probably not quite where he wanted to be on the night. But as we'll see when we get to the playoff grid, still barely in the playoffs. Not by much. Well, really not by anything, but still in the playoffs nonetheless. Ryan Blaney landed in 13th. First car 1 lap down. His teammate Joey Logano right behind him in 14th. Truex back here in 15th. Jimmy Johnson 16th. Eric Almirola on that playoff bubble a little bit. He has fallen back in recent weeks from where he had been in points, but 17th does lock him into the playoffs on points. Does not need to go into Indianapolis worrying about whether he will make the playoffs or not. Chase Elliott landed in the 19th position, 21st through 30th. Your pole sitter, William Byron, after getting caught up in the pseudo big one, lands in the 21st position, 2 laps down in his Days of Thunder throwback. Ryan Newman battling to stay in the playoffs, had that incident with Daniel Suarez in the middle of the race. He came home in the 23rd position in his Mark Martin throwback. Bubba Wallace running an Adam Petty throwback this week. He came home in 24th. Denny Hamlin down here in 29th. Had a fast car and unfortunately issues late kept him from a decent finish, 11 laps off the pace for Denny Hamlin in the 29th position. Final page 31st through 39th, Ricky Stenhouse down here in 33rd. And 37th would be Daniel Hemrick after getting caught up in an accident in the middle of the race. So that's your results from the Bojangles Southern 500. Let's head over to the Media Center. We will see what Erik and his team had to say after their first win of the season.
I think more of it's just the tracks I grew up racing are real similar to this place. I relate this place a lot to a place called Winchester up in Indiana and a place called Berlin up in Michigan, and two different tracks in a lot of ways. But Berlin was really tough on tires, and Winchester I ran a real similar line there actually to what I run here. Most of the time I run a real low line around here, which is a little off, I guess, for most, but, it works pretty good for myself, and kind of learned that at Winchester racing late models, and this is the one track where I feel like my short track stuff really transfers over, and as far as saving tires and managing your stuff, and that's what makes it fun. I've always been a fan of Darlington, and I think maybe my age helped with the fact we finished at 2 a.m. more than anything, This is about the time I'm waking up. I feel good right now. So, no, it's awesome, man. I mean, the Southern 500 is one that real high on my bucket list of races to win in my career, and it sure feels good to get one this early.
Yeah, it for sure speaks to the strength of our organization. From speaking for the 20 team themselves, right, we want to go in with a win, and that's the big thing. Like, I think that's what feels so good, to me right now, is to not have to points our way in. Obviously, we've sat around and watched the other three guys winning 4 races and wanted to be a part of that. And it's been an up and down year where various things have kept us from reaching our potential. But I think if you look over the last 8 to 10 weeks, there's only been a couple of races that we haven't been in contention to get that win every week. And we've been talking about that. That's just what we focus on, doing that every week. And we're gonna get those wins, and more are going to come.
All right, so let's take a look at your playoff grid before wrapping up here tonight. A lot more drivers locked in than they were coming into this race. And as we've been saying, really it's that battle down here from 15th to 18th as to who's going to get into the playoffs. Everybody 14th and above. All these guys in on points. Larson, Blaney, Byron, Almirola, they're all locked in at this point on points. Bowyer, Suarez, definitely not safe at this point. Bowyer's only 8 points to the good, but does take a 10-point swing this week. He came into this race 2 points out and now sits 15th, 8 points above the cutoff line. But the cutoff line is the real intriguing part here. Daniel Suarez currently sits in 16th because he has the tiebreaker over Ryan Newman. They leave Darlington tied in points heading into Indianapolis, which will decide who gets into the playoffs. And with the incident that they had, and with Newman not being happy with Suarez, and Suarez really not being happy with Newman either, this could set up some drama in Indianapolis to get into the playoffs. And then you've got Jimmy Johnson lurking back here. Johnson's not out of this yet. 18 points is a fairly sizable gap, but it is not impossible. Really, all that takes is a couple decent stage finishes and a decent finish in the race comparatively to where Suarez and Newman run, and all of a sudden Johnson's in the playoffs. 18 points is not that much. Yes, he's kind of in a must-win situation, but not really, given that we're in the stage point era, and stage points can swing things a lot. So, is 18 points a sizable gap? Yes. Is it impossible? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. Jimmy Johnson very well could still sneak his way into the playoffs. Is it likely? Maybe not, but is it still possible? Definitely, completely still possible. Everyone below him, though, Paul Menard, Chris Buescher, Ricky Stenhouse, all these guys, they are eliminated without a win in Indianapolis. That is the only way anybody below Jimmy Johnson is going to get into the playoffs. Newman and Johnson can still do it on points, but everybody else below them, they're going to have to win at Indianapolis if they want to get into the playoffs. But this is shaping up to be a really good cutoff line battle at Indianapolis to see who gets into the playoffs between Bowyer, Suarez, Newman, and Johnson. 2 spots available, 4 drivers fighting for it, and then you've got the drama of somebody outside of them may win and take one of those spots. So this is shaping up to be really, really good at Indianapolis. But that is your playoff grid following the Bojangles Southern 500 with one race remaining before we set the playoff grid for 2019. And I believe that'll do it for us on this Cup Series Rewind show. We had an ARCA Rewind go up yesterday for their race Saturday night in DuQuoin. So if you haven't seen that yet, go check that out. And we've got Diecast Review coming up on Wednesday. It'll be Kyle Busch's Phoenix win from 2018, his playoff winner from the penultimate race of 2018. So that'll be a fun one to look at. Our next to last 2018 Cup car to look at for this year, we just have Joey Logano's Homestead win, and that'll do it for 2018 race wins. Then we got to get into 2019 stuff. So lots of cool stuff coming up there. And then, of course, Indianapolis coming up next weekend for both Xfinity and Cup. I will be there for both races, being a spotter for one of the pit reporters on the radio broadcast, so I'll have a bit of a different perspective of that race. Don't worry, there will be rewind shows, but be a bit of a different perspective, as I probably won't get the chance to watch the TV broadcast before recording these, so it'll be interesting to see how those come out and what actually my perspective is, because I've never been a spotter for a pit reporter before, so be interesting to see how that turns out, but I'm sure it'll be a good time, and hopefully sign of things to come here in the future. But if you haven't done it already, you need to go down below, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss a thing going forward from RNN. While you're down there, why don't you hit that big thumbs up button if you like the video. It is much appreciated when you do. But at that, this has been the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series Rewind Show. I'm Garth Allen for Racing News Now.